The global landscape is just constantly swirling, always shifting, and one of the most compelling narratives unfolding right now, I think, involves the dynamic relationship between a rising global power and, well, an entire continent. We're talking about how China is strategically building connections across Latin America and the Caribbean, and believe me, it's far more intricate, maybe even strategically brilliant than you might initially imagine. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the strategic enhancement and what's known as differential governance, sounds complicated, I'll unpack it, of China's partnership diplomacy across Latin America and the Caribbean, LAC for short. Our mission, pure and simple, is to unpack China's evolving approach, to really understand this meticulous tiered system it uses for engaging with different countries in the region, and also to explore the significant, often complex challenges that naturally arise from such an ambitious, long-term strategy. It's really about getting you, the listener, well-informed, quickly.
Now, what's truly fascinating here, and maybe a surprising fact for many, is that China's very first strategic partnership, established globally way back in 1993, it wasn't with a European power or a close Asian neighbor. Nope. It was with a Latin American country, Brazil. That detail alone tells you something profound right from the very beginning about the long-term vision China has held for this region. It signals a kind of deep, enduring commitment.
And that's a crucial point to start with, because when we talk about partnership in international relations, especially in this context that our research highlights, it's vital to grasp its specific meaning. It's often, mistakenly lumped in with alliance.
Right, people use them interchangeably sometimes.
They do. But the material for this deep dive makes a very clear and important distinction. Unlike traditional alliances, which are typically forged to balance against threats and often come with explicit military commitments, these partnerships are primarily interest-driven alignments.
Interest-driven alignments, all right.
Think of them less like a military pact, maybe more like a strategic business venture where both sides see mutual benefit over the long haul. They don't necessarily imply military cooperation, though that can be a component in some specific cases. Instead, the focus is squarely on achieving common goals and advancing shared interests across a really broad spectrum: economic, cultural, technological, diplomatic fields.
So a much wider scope than just security.
Much wider. And the key principles, as meticulously outlined, are equality, independence, mutual benefit, and a commitment to long-term, multifaceted cooperation. This essentially means it's a form of visionary, almost long-term planning for international actors, primarily sovereign states. They establish cooperative relationships designed to achieve both shared and individual national interests.
So it's pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. It's a proactive and remarkably flexible approach to shaping a favorable international environment built firmly on a foundation of reciprocal gain.
Okay, let's unpack this fascinating journey then.
Yeah.
We need to trace its evolution, because what we find, right, is that in the early 21st century, the economic and trade relations between China and Latin American countries really started to boom. And this wasn't just some, casual organic development happening by chance.
Not at all.
Our sources reveal that China's growing partnership network in LAC became an absolutely essential support for implementing its foreign policy. It was consistent with its broader, overarching strategic layout for the region. It's like building a foundation, maybe, brick by meticulous brick, laying the groundwork for a future presence across an entire continent.
And what's truly compelling, as you say, is that this wasn't static. It wasn't a one-and-done strategy. It evolved significantly over time, revealing a masterclass in strategic adaptation, really. The sources meticulously break down China's engagement into three distinct and revealing phases. Each one reflects crucial shifts in global dynamics and, crucially, China's own rapidly growing influence on the world stage.
Right, it adapts.
It's a clear demonstration of foresight and the ability to iterate on a grand scale.
Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning then. Phase 1, a period of strategic exploration, spanning roughly from 1993 to 2002. If you think back to the early 1990s, the dramatic, seismic changes unfolding in Eastern Europe, the collapse of the Soviet Union. China found itself facing significant international pressure, sanctions even, from Western countries like the United States. It must have been a moment of vulnerability, maybe, of strategic recalculation for Beijing. So in that challenging climate, what exactly did China do? How did they navigate this new global reality?
Well, this really raises an important question about strategic necessity, doesn't it? How nations adapt under pressure. Facing that challenging international landscape, China adopted a diplomatic strategy rooted in what it called independent and peaceful foreign policy. It emphasized non-alignment and non-hegemony. The priority, in essence, was to strengthen ties with the developing world, often referred to at the time as the Third World, and to cultivate friendly, cooperative relations. Brazil, as you noted, became the trailblazer for this new approach in 1993. It initiated China's formal practice of partnership diplomacy on a global scale.
So Brazil was literally the first one.
Literally the first. It was a clear early signal of China's intention to diversify its international engagement and build a network of support beyond traditional blocs. This wasn't just a handshake, it was a deliberate, calculated move to forge new pathways.
That makes perfect sense strategically. But let's dig a little deeper into that specific choice. Why Brazil? I mean, why was Brazil, of all countries, chosen as China's very first global strategic partner? Why not a closer neighbor or a major Western power or even another large developing country in Asia or Africa?
Whoa.
What made Brazil so uniquely suited for this groundbreaking relationship back in '93?
The material highlights three distinct yet interconnected reasons for Brazil's pivotal role back then. Firstly, and perhaps most fundamentally, they shared remarkably similar development strategies and common interests. Both China and Brazil are immense developing countries, right? Situated on different continents, but crucially without any significant historical grudges or conflicts of political interest that might complicate their relationship.
Right, no baggage there.
Exactly. This shared identity as large, aspiring economies, coupled with that lack of historical baggage, made them sort of natural partners. Secondly, both nations were actively seeking a more comprehensive and solid relationship to advance their respective national goals at that specific time. In the early 90s, China was experiencing dizzying economic growth, but it navigated a complex and sometimes hostile international situation. Brazil, on its part, was grappling with a persistent external debt crisis, economic recession, and increasing social conflicts.
So both had needs.
Both had pressing needs. Brazil saw immediate opportunities to leverage China's burgeoning economic growth for its own exports and to attract much-needed investment. Concurrently, China sought access to Brazil's abundant high-quality raw materials, particularly iron ore and agricultural products, and new markets for its rapidly expanding industrial output. It was a convergence of very real, tangible needs.
A clear win-win, potentially.
Potentially, yes. And thirdly, beyond just the economic synergy, there was significant potential for broad cooperation and a strong alignment on global issues. Both countries were vocal champions of promoting South-South cooperation. You know, the idea of developing nations collaborating to uplift one another.
Right.
And they shared a common vision for establishing a more equitable and multipolar international political and economic order. This shared philosophical foundation, striving for a more balanced global stage, provided a robust sort of ideological bedrock for their strategic partnership, elevating it beyond mere commerce.
So Brazil was a pioneer in '93. But then there's this significant gap. It took almost a full decade for a second LAC country to join this exclusive strategic partnership club. Venezuela finally entered in 2001. What was the driving force behind that after such a long interval? What changed in China's strategic calculus, or maybe in Venezuela, that made this partnership finally come to fruition?
That delay between the two partnerships actually tells us quite a lot about China's evolving needs and the specific targeted nature of these early relationships. By the mid-1990s and certainly into the early 2000s, China's rapidly expanding economy had led to a burgeoning dependence on petroleum imports, a huge need for energy.
Energy security.
Exactly. This created a powerful and strategic desire for expanded energy cooperation to bolster its long-term energy security. Simultaneously, in Venezuela, a dramatic shift occurred with the election of Hugo Chavez in 1999. Chavez, a populist leader, was deeply committed to recovering oil sovereignty for Venezuela and drastically reducing its long-standing reliance on the United States, both for oil sales and for technological expertise in its energy sector.
He wanted independence from the U.S.
Very much so. And he viewed China as a crucial, willing partner in this endeavor, not just as a market for oil, but as a strategic balancing force against what he perceived as overwhelming U.S. influence in the region. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it demonstrates how China was adapting its partnership diplomacy to meet specific critical resource needs.
Like oil.
Like oil. While also aligning with countries that sought to diversify their international relationships and enhance their geopolitical leverage against dominant powers. It wasn't merely about general friendship anymore. These partnerships were becoming increasingly about specific, tangible interests and a broader strategic realignment on the global stage.
A very pragmatic approach then.
Highly pragmatic, tailoring partnerships to particular urgent requirements.
So in this initial strategic exploration stage, it really sounds like Latin America wasn't necessarily the absolute top priority for China's overall diplomatic strategy. That focus was still largely on major powers, maybe immediate neighbors. The partnerships were limited in number, but as we've seen, highly strategic and purpose-driven, foundational, but not yet widespread.
Precisely. The sources unequivocally indicate that during this foundational phase, China's primary diplomatic focus remains squarely on improving its relations with other major global powers like Russia, the United States, the European Union, as well as strengthening ties with its immediate neighbors across Asia, such as Pakistan and the ASEAN member states.
Right, the bigger players and the neighborhood first.
Exactly. The establishment of these pioneering strategic partnerships with Brazil and Venezuela, while undoubtedly significant and forward-looking, was more about strategic exploration and addressing specific, targeted needs, like resource access, diversifying diplomatic engagement in a post-Cold War world. Rather than a broad, region-wide engagement plan for all of Latin America, it was truly the embryonic stage, a cautious but prescient beginning of what would later blossom into a much larger, more complex, and deeply interconnected network.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think, and the narrative picks up pace. As we moved into the 21st century, Phase 2, strategic development, roughly 2003 to 2013, China's economic power just surged with unprecedented speed and scale. What did this mean for its diplomatic strategy towards Latin America and the Caribbean? Did it accelerate dramatically? Did it broaden its scope? How did Beijing respond to its own burgeoning influence?
The material indicates a profound shift, almost a strategic pivot that marked this second phase. China's diplomatic focus broadened considerably to include a much wider array of middle-developed and developing countries across the globe. And Latin America was certainly no exception. As China's economic engine roared, LAC countries themselves witnessing this incredible rise and actively seeking to diversify their own foreign relations amidst rapidly changing international dynamics. They increasingly viewed China as not just an option, but a crucial strategic partner.
They saw the opportunity.
They saw the opportunity. And this powerful convergence of mutual interest fueled rapid growth. The number of partnerships expanded dramatically in this period, moving far beyond just a couple of isolated, almost experimental relationships. It became a deliberate, widespread network-building exercise.
And within this rapid expansion, who were the first countries China targeted? Was there a discernible pattern? What made them particularly attractive partners at this point?
Absolutely. There is a clear pattern. Countries possessing strong economic capabilities and significant regional influence were consistently top choices for China. The clear aim was to deepen economic ties with major regional players who could offer substantial trade volumes, significant investment opportunities, and a foundation for broader economic integration.
So the big economies first.
Exactly. For instance, a strategic partnership was established with Mexico in December 2003, quickly followed by Argentina in June 2004, Chile in November 2004, and then Peru in 2008. These were, without question, the economic heavyweights of the region. Establishing partnerships with them was about solidifying substantial, mutually beneficial economic relationships, essentially locking in key commercial anchors across the continent. It demonstrated a clear prioritization of economic clout.
But what about countries that weren't necessarily economic giants? Did China have a nuanced plan for them too? Perhaps looking beyond sheer GDP to other forms of strategic value?
And this is where China's sophisticated differential approach, which we'll talk more about later, truly shines. They also strategically established partnerships with countries that, while perhaps not economic titans, could have a powerful radiating effect on their neighbors or within specific subregions.
A radiating effect. How so?
It wasn't just about the biggest markets, it was about strategic penetration and influence. Jamaica, for example, became a friendly partnership for common development in February 2005. Now, Jamaica is a smaller nation, but it's one of China's largest trading partners in the English-speaking Caribbean. And its formal recognition of China as a market economy following the establishment of this partnership served as a highly visible and positive model for the entire Caribbean region.
Ah, so others watched Jamaica.
Exactly. Other nations in the Caribbean watched and learned from Jamaica's engagement. Similarly, Trinidad and Tobago, also in 2005, became a friendly and cooperative partnership for mutually beneficial development. As a key oil exporter and a founding member of CARICOM and the Association of Caribbean States, it held significant strategic importance for regional outreach and energy diversification for China.
So different types of strategic value.
Precisely. This illustrates how China wasn't simply looking for the largest economies, it was also meticulously choosing countries that could act as entry points, influencers, or strategic connectors within critical subregions, creating a ripple effect of engagement. The sources even note a significant joint press communique in 2006 establishing a consultation mechanism with the Caribbean diplomatic community, signaling China's proactive approach to broader regional engagement, using these link countries as springboards.
It sounds like this phase 2, was about more than just adding new partners to the roster. It was also about deepening and elevating existing ones, signaling a growing commitment and maturity in the relationships. Is that right?
Absolutely, and it's a critical observation. The material shows a significant push towards deepening existing ties alongside forging new ones. It reflects a dynamic and maturing strategy. During this period, 6 new partnerships were established, yes, but 5 existing ones saw significant upgrades,
Upgrades meaning?
meaning elevating the level of the partnership, giving it a higher designation, implying broader scope and deeper commitment. For instance, by 2012, China had surpassed the United States to become Brazil's top trading partner. The total trade volume that year reached a massive $75.4 billion.
Wow.
This wasn't just a big number, it was a fundamental shift that fundamentally altered Brazil's foreign policy calculus. This economic milestone naturally led to the elevation of their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership in June 2012, a substantial step up.
Comprehensive strategic partnership. That sounds important.
It is. It's generally considered a very high level. Similarly, Chile and Peru, both key economic players, also saw their partnerships upgraded to strategic or comprehensive strategic partnerships in 2012 and 2013, respectively. Reflecting the maturation and deepening of their relationships with Beijing, in June 2013, during President Xi Jinping's visit, Mexico's relationship was also upgraded to a comprehensive strategic partnership, signifying broader areas of cooperation. And Trinidad and Tobago, after Xi's visit there, saw its bilateral relations elevated to a comprehensive cooperative partnership, explicitly characterized by mutual respect, equality, mutual benefit, and common development.
So a clear pattern of deepening ties.
A clear and consistent pattern of intensifying engagement as China's influence and economic ties matured across the entire region. It's a strategic deepening, not just a widening.
So if we step back, what does this all mean for China's strategy in LAC at this point? What was the overarching takeaway from this phase of rapid development upgrades, phase 2?
The sources unequivocally emphasize that China's understanding of partnership diplomacy deepened significantly during this phase, and its differential strategy, its ability to tailor engagement, improved considerably. This period, from 2003 to 2013, truly laid down the basic framework for China's future, more sophisticated partnership strategy in the region. It created a more balanced geopolitical pattern in Sino-Latin American relations, which not only enhanced China's ability to manage its general diplomacy across the region, but also greatly strengthened China's diplomatic flexibility in its geopolitical approach towards LAC.
So it set the stage for what came next.
Exactly. It marked a crucial transition from an almost opportunistic bilateral engagement to a much more structured, nuanced, and ultimately sophisticated long-term strategy for the entire continent. It set the stage for the next, even more ambitious phase.
All right, let's fast forward then to phase 3. Strategic improvement. Spanning from 2014 roughly to the present day, by this point, China's partnerships were transforming into a truly unique and powerful diplomatic tool. What prompted this crucial shift, and what profound implications did it have for its engagement with Latin America and the Caribbean? It sounds like China was moving into a new gear entirely.
Indeed, it was a definite shift. By November 2012, the Communist Party of China had officially proposed a new type of more equal and balanced global partnership for development. This effectively elevated partnership diplomacy to an entirely new strategic level within China's overall foreign policy. This new emphasis shifted China's primary focus even more strongly towards developing countries globally, reinforcing that idea of South-South cooperation.
Okay.
In this elevated context, Latin America and the Caribbean experienced yet another distinct wave of partnership building with China. This wave was characterized by even greater breadth, unparalleled depth in some cases, and a focus on institutionalizing these relationships.
Institutionalizing.
Yeah, meaning moving beyond just bilateral agreements towards more formal structures, like regional forums. It signaled China's mature approach, no longer merely exploring or developing, but strategically refining and improving its already extensive network.
Okay, given the immense political, social, and economic diversity across LAC, it's hardly monolithic. How did China approach building a truly comprehensive and balanced relationship regionally? Was it still purely bilateral, country by country, or did it try something entirely new to engage the region as a whole?
This is a crucial area of innovation highlighted by the material in this phase. It points to the immense significance of utilizing existing regional organizations as platforms for broader engagement. The Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, or CELAC, established in December 2011, notably as a bloc excluding the U.S. and Canada, created the ideal conditions for constructing China's multilateral partnerships with the region.
Ah, CLAT.
Exactly. So in July 2014, during his first collective meeting with Latin American leaders in Brazil, President Xi Jinping proposed developing a China-CELAC comprehensive partnership, and this would be done through a robust cooperation framework known as the China-CELAC Forum.
A dedicated forum just for China and CLAC.
Precisely. And this was a truly monumental step. Why? Because it formally completed China's overall diplomatic layout for cooperation across all major developing regions globally. It sat alongside its existing comprehensive strategic partnerships with ASEAN and Southeast Asia, its strategic partnership with the EU, and its established forum on China-Africa cooperation.
So it filled a gap in their global strategy.
It completed the picture, exactly. This strategic move allowed China to engage the LAC region as a whole, acknowledging its diversity while simultaneously seeking collective, institutionalized mechanisms for cooperation. It provided a powerful single platform for dialogue and collaboration, streamlining engagement and elevating the entire relationship to a new collective level.
That's a major development. But beyond this groundbreaking regional approach with CLAC, did China continue to forge new bilateral partnerships with individual nations, or was the focus predominantly on the regional initiatives at this point? Did they keep adding countries one by one?
Oh, absolutely. The multi-level strategy remained very much in play. The sources show a continued and rapid increase in new bilateral partnerships, demonstrating that China was pursuing both broad multilateral engagement and deep bilateral ties simultaneously. It wasn't either.
Doing both at once.
Exactly. In January 2015, Ecuador and Costa Rica established strategic partnerships. Costa Rica notably becoming the first Central American country to do so, emphasizing principles like equality, mutual trust, and win-win cooperation in their joint declaration. Uruguay followed in October 2016 with its own strategic partnership. Bolivia established a strategic partnership in June 2018, and in November 2019, Suriname saw its relationship upgraded to a strategic cooperative partnership.
So still actively expanding the network country by country.
Consistently and deliberately expanding. It underscored China's unwavering commitment to building out its network extensively, even while pursuing broader regional platforms like the CELAC Forum.
And what about the depth of these relationships during this phase? Were existing partnerships also evolving, perhaps reaching unprecedented heights in terms of commitment and cooperation? We saw upgrades in Phase 2. Did that continue?
Yes, and this raises an important question about the profound level of commitment China was willing to undertake in some cases. Many previously established partnerships saw significant upgrades, reflecting increased trust, broadened scope, and intensified cooperation. In July 2014, for instance, Venezuela and Argentina both saw their relations elevated to comprehensive strategic partnerships. Venezuela's upgrade was particularly notable, involving the signing of 16 cooperation documents across highly diverse fields: energy, mining, finance, infrastructure.
16 documents. Wow. That's specific.
Very specific. This wasn't just symbolic, it was about embedding cooperation into tangible projects and frameworks. Ecuador and Chile followed suit in November 2016, also upgrading their bilateral relations to comprehensive strategic partnerships. Jamaica's relationship was upgraded to a strategic partnership in November 2019. And then, most recently, the highest level of cooperation reached so far, signaling an unparalleled depth of commitment, is Venezuela's all-weather strategic partnership established in September 2023.
All-weather. What does that signify?
The term all-weather, as the sources meticulously explain, suggests that cooperation between the two countries would continue, regardless of how the external environment changes. It implies a profound, long-term commitment that transcends immediate political or economic fluctuations. It's a very strong signal.
Oh, it's really strong.
Overall, this phase saw a strategy emphasizing both comprehensiveness and reach and a remarkable hierarchy in depth, leading to demonstrable and significant positive results in strengthening cooperation across the board.
So when we pull back and look at the overall picture, what do the numbers tell us about these partnerships from 1993 all the way to December 2023, according to the data in our sources? How does this multi-decade strategic evolution sum up numerically?
The data in our sources is quite telling, truly encapsulating the strategic enhancement China has pursued over 3 decades. By December 2023, China had established formal partnerships with 16 countries or regional organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean.
16. That's a lot from just 2 initially.
It's a substantial expansion, demonstrating Beijing's remarkable reach. Furthermore, there have been 12 recorded upgrades to existing partnerships, illustrating the continuous deepening of these relationships over time. This includes crucial upgrades like Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Peru, and Trinidad and Tobago in earlier phases, and then Argentina, Venezuela, Ecuador, Jamaica, and Uruguay in more recent years, as we just discussed.
So both adding new ones and deepening existing ones consistently.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this data reflects a highly dynamic, persistent, and meticulously planned strategy, emphasizing both comprehensiveness and geographic reach, and a remarkable hierarchy and depth of engagement. It has undeniably led to positive results in strengthening cooperation across the board and fundamentally reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the region. It's really a testament to the patient and evolving nature of China's engagement, a long game played with increasing sophistication.
That brings us perfectly to the next major component of China's strategy you mentioned earlier, differential governance. This sounds complex, almost like a corporate strategy term applied to diplomacy. What exactly does it mean in the context of China's diplomatic strategy in Latin America and the Caribbean, and why is it so important for their overall approach?
It does sound a bit corporate, doesn't it? But the material explains that differential governance isn't some nebulous concept. It's a highly rational and deliberate choice for China to effectively realize its national interests in a very diverse region like LAC. At its core, it's about applying a dynamic, evolving, and customized approach to its partners, always prioritizing sincerity and mutual cooperation, at least ostensibly.
Customized approach,
Yeah.
like tailoring it to each country.
Exactly. Essentially, it allows China to hierarchically deploy its diplomatic strategy. Think of it like a finely tuned investment portfolio for international relations. This means Beijing can quickly and accurately identify its preferred targets for strategic collaboration within LAC and then rationally deploy and precisely invest its diplomatic resources where they can have the most significant and targeted impact.
So putting more effort where it counts most for them.
Pretty much, it's about optimizing the diplomatic efforts for maximum efficiency and return on investment rather than applying a simplistic one-size-fits-all approach to an incredibly varied continent.
That makes a lot of sense strategically. So if it's like a tiered loyalty program, almost, what specific factors does China consider when deciding how to categorize and manage these partnerships? How do they determine which tier a country falls into or how much diplomatic capital to invest?
The sources clearly identify 3 core factors that meticulously guide this differential approach. It's quite systematic. Firstly, the target country's political stance towards China, often referred to as political friendliness or willingness to align.
How friendly are they?
Basically, this gauges how receptive a country is to China's vision and how reliably it might support China on international platforms. Secondly, its geopolitical influence. This forms the foundational weight of the relationship.
How important are they regionally or globally?
Exactly. Does the country hold significant sway regionally or globally? Is it strategically located? And thirdly, the potential for economic and trade cooperation. This represents the potential for mutual growth and tangible benefits down the line.
The economic upside.
Right. Based on these 3 comprehensive criteria, China's 15 partner countries in LAC are carefully categorized into 3 distinct levels or types. This allows China to meticulously tailor its engagement and resource allocation effectively, ensuring every diplomatic effort is purposeful.
Okay, 3 levels. Let's start with the top tier then, the pivotal countries. Who are they, and what exactly makes them so crucial to China's entire strategy in the region? These must be the heavy hitters.
They absolutely are the heavy hitters. These countries are vital, almost indispensable for supporting China's entire partnership network in LAC. As of December 2023, the sources list 8 pivotal countries. This includes Venezuela, which holds that truly unique status of being China's one all-weather strategic partner, the highest possible level we mentioned, signifying endurance through any challenge.
The ultimate partner, almost.
In designation, yes. The other 7 are comprehensive strategic partners: Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, and Uruguay. These are the foundational relationships that anchor China's deep and enduring presence in the region, acting as central pillars for its broader diplomatic architecture.
What specifically stands out to you about these 8 countries on the global stage? What kind of influence do they wield that makes them so pivotal for China beyond just their size or economy?
Well, firstly, they are unequivocally regional strategic partners with significant global influence, and they consistently provide firm support to China on international occasions and within multilateral frameworks. Take Brazil, for example. It has been China's largest trading partner in LAC for 14 consecutive years and ranks as China's ninth largest trading partner globally. That's significant weight.
Huge economic tie.
Huge. And both are large developing countries with emerging markets sharing remarkably similar philosophies on global governance, often advocating for a more multipolar world order. They engage in long-term cooperation in crucial multilateral mechanisms, the UN, G20, the AIIB, BRICS.
The big international forums.
Exactly. Similarly, when Ecuador's relationship with China was enhanced to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2016, and Ecuador subsequently held the rotating presidency of the Group of 77 the following year. This strategic alignment directly promoted closer collaboration between the Group of 77 and China in vital multilateral institutions. Their influence amplifies China's voice and agenda on the world stage.
Does this high-level support and global influence translate into frequent interactions, direct communication between the very top leaders? I can almost visualize this with the patterns of engagement that our sources describe.
Yes, absolutely. The data consistently shows that the frequency of exchanges between the heads of state of China and its pivotal partners is significantly higher than with other types of countries.
More FaceTime.
Considerably more FaceTime. And this isn't just symbolic. These frequent high-level exchanges are deeply functional. They enable frank and in-depth communication on issues of mutual concern, providing direct channels to address potential points of friction or misunderstanding. This direct dialogue helps to promptly eliminate misunderstandings, promotes the effective management and control of differences, and crucially, enhances political and strategic mutual trust at the very highest levels.
Builds that personal connection at the top.
It's a powerful feedback loop that consistently strengthens the partnership from the very top, ensuring alignment and reducing miscommunication.
And economically, just to confirm, how do these pivotal countries fit in? Are they definitively China's biggest trading partners within the region?
Without a doubt, these pivotal countries are China's most important economic and trade partners in Latin America. The numbers really speak for themselves. China is currently the largest trading partner for Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Uruguay.
For the 8.
Right, and it's the second largest trading partner for Argentina, Ecuador, and Mexico.
So 7 out of the 8 are number 1 or 2.
Exactly. This fact really underscores the deep and extensive economic foundation of these pivotal relationships. They act as powerful engines for bilateral trade, investment, and broader economic cooperation within the region. It's where the most substantial commercial ties are forged, driving significant mutual benefit and intertwining their economic futures.
Okay, moving down a tier from the pivotal countries, we have what China designates as link countries. What role do they play in this sophisticated network, and how do they differ from the pivotal ones we just discussed? What makes them bridges and bonds?
The material describes these link countries as absolutely crucial in building bridges and bonds within China's broader partnership network in LAC. There are 4 strategic partners currently in this category: Bolivia, Jamaica, Costa Rica, and Colombia. While they may not consistently possess the same global economic or geopolitical clout as the pivotal countries, they serve a distinct and incredibly important purpose in expanding China's regional reach and influence. They act as strategic connectors rather than primary anchors.
Strategic connectors. What specifically makes them link countries then? Is it their geographic position, their specific economic attributes, or something else that gives them this unique role?
It's a strategic combination of factors, but primarily their ability to help expand China's international cooperation and, crucially, their capacity to play that radiating role you mentioned earlier in neighboring areas or subregions. They also maintain relatively close economic and trade ties with China, providing tangible benefits, but the radiating role is key.
Can you give an example of that radiating role?
Sure. Take Jamaica again. As we noted earlier, it's among China's largest trading partners in the English-speaking Caribbean. In February 2005, they established a friendly partnership, which was later upgraded to a strategic partnership in 2019. But here's the key radiating effect. In April 2019, Jamaica became the very first English-speaking Caribbean country to sign a memorandum of understanding on Belt and Road cooperation with China.
The first in that specific group?
Exactly. This was a significant development because it sent a clear signal throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. It essentially demonstrated that engagement with China, and specifically through the Belt and Road Initiative, could be mutually beneficial and viable for smaller island nations. Other nations like Barbados, Trinidad, and Tobago, who we'll get to soon, and Guyana soon followed suit, looking to replicate Jamaica's perceived success in attracting Chinese investment for crucial infrastructure and development projects.
So Jamaica acted as a model.
It acted as a model and a gateway. These linked countries aren't just partners, they serve as strategic connectors, extending China's influence into critical subregions by setting a precedent and demonstrating the benefits of engagement.
Finally, we arrive at the node countries. What precisely defines this group? And what's unique about their relationship with China compared to the other two tiers? It sounds like they hold a special kind of value, maybe not purely economic or geopolitical.
You're right, they do hold a distinct value. These are countries with whom China has established strategic cooperative or comprehensive cooperative partnerships. The sources list Suriname and Trinidad and Tobago in this category. What fundamentally defines them is a high degree of historical and consistent political friendship with China, coupled with the ability to play an exemplary role regionally and even globally, even if their current economic and trade ties with China are weaker compared to the pivotal or link countries.
So strong political friendship is key here.
It's paramount. Their significance lies less in raw economic muscle and more in their strong political alignment, consistent support over time, and symbolic value within China's diplomatic framework.
So if it's not primarily about economic muscle, what's unique about their relationship with China then? How do they offer this exemplary role? What makes them a model?
Their uniqueness lies in their early and unwavering political alignment and consistent willingness to cooperate, often setting precedents. Suriname, for instance, stands out remarkably. It was among the very first Caribbean countries to recognize the One China principle and establish diplomatic relations with Beijing way back in 1976.
76, that's very early.
Very early. For those unfamiliar, the One China principle refers to Beijing's fundamental political stance that there is only one sovereign state under the name China, and that Taiwan is an inseparable part of it. A country recognizing this principle signals strong political alignment with Beijing and its core sovereignty claims. Because of this steadfast support, China-Suriname relations have, for over 40 years, been considered a priority in China's overall relations with Caribbean countries.
Loyalty matters.
Loyalty clearly matters. Moreover, in May 2018, Suriname became the first Caribbean country to sign a Memorandum of Understanding on the Belt and Road Initiative with China again, an exemplary act that paved the way for others in the region. The sources explicitly highlight that China considers relations with Suriname a model of friendly relations and equal treatment between countries of different sizes.
A model of equal treatment. Interesting phrasing.
Very interesting. It signifies that while their economic footprint might be smaller, their unwavering political friendliness and consistent support for China's core diplomatic principles make them incredibly valuable nodes in China's network. They demonstrate the breadth, inclusivity, and long-term loyalty that China values in its partnership diplomacy.
Okay, so while China has clearly built this impressive, intricate, and deeply complex partnership network across Latin America and the Caribbean using this differential governance approach, it's certainly not without its hurdles. Our sources meticulously identify several significant challenges that lie ahead. It sounds like this is very much a long-term project, with inherent risks and complexities that need constant navigation. Not smooth sailing all the way.
Not at all, and this raises an absolutely important question. How sustainable is this remarkably ambitious strategy in the face of various internal and external pressures? And what factors could potentially derail or significantly complicate it? The material provides some critical insights into these pressures, indicating that China's diplomatic path in LAC is far from a smooth, linear, or guaranteed success. These challenges are crucial to understanding the full, nuanced picture of China's extensive and evolving engagement in the region.
Let's start with the internal dynamics then. Within China itself, how well does partnership diplomacy as a tool fit into China's broader foreign policy toolkit? Is it fully integrated? Or are there internal coordination issues that could hinder its effectiveness?
The material points out a significant challenge right there. While partnership diplomacy is undoubtedly essential and a core pillar of China's foreign policy, it sometimes lacks sufficient cooperation and seamless integration with China's other major diplomatic means, like the overarching goal of building a community of common destiny for mankind. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi himself has stated that China actively advocates for a new type of international relations and seeks to build this community of common destiny, which is a vast and ambitious vision encompassing various aspects: political trust, economic interdependence, shared security.
A very grand vision.
Extremely grand. However, the sources suggest that within China's own vast diplomatic machinery and overall framework, there hasn't always been a clear, institutionalized, or sufficiently coordinated mechanism for integrating partnership diplomacy with these other grand diplomatic tools. This can occasionally lead to partnerships becoming what the sources term formalistic,
Formalistic,
meaning they exist robustly on paper, they're celebrated with announcements and joint statements, but sometimes lack clear, measurable effectiveness on the ground or deep synergy with other initiatives. Things might not connect up properly.
so maybe more symbolic than substantive sometimes.
That's the potential risk highlighted. It clearly suggests a persistent need for China to clarify strategic goals within its overall diplomatic framework and significantly improve synergy across its different diplomatic paths to enhance the tangible effectiveness of these partnerships. It's like having a powerful orchestra where not all the instruments are perfectly synchronized or playing from the exact same sheet music.
Okay, that's an internal challenge. Now let's turn outwards. Here's where the geopolitics really heat up. How does the increasing, often intense competition between China and the United States directly impact China's partnerships in Latin America and the Caribbean? Do Latin American countries themselves feel caught in the middle of these two giants?
Oh, absolutely. Our sources are remarkably clear that U.S. policy towards LAC, especially in recent years, has increasingly shown what they describe as hegemonic intentions. This often translates into demanding an exclusive relationship with Latin American countries, essentially attempting to push them away from deeper engagement with China. It's a competitive dynamic.
The U.S. pushing back.
Definitely. We've seen a clear strategic response from the U.S. to China's growing presence, marked by various initiatives. For instance, the Build Back Better World initiative, launched by the G7, or the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, and even the Alliance for Democratic Development. These are all cited as examples of the U.S. attempting to consolidate its dominant position and increase its strategic attention and resource investment in the region, often explicitly framed as an alternative to Chinese influence.
Offering a different path.
Exactly. Now, what's particularly fascinating and complex here is that some of China's very main partner countries in LAC, pivotal ones like Mexico, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, and Uruguay, have actually chosen to join these U.S.-led mechanisms.
Joining both sides in a way.
Precisely. This creates an incredibly complex environment where Latin American and Caribbean countries are actively trying to maintain their independence and avoid, as the sources put it, falling into the trap of this dispute. Their strategic aim, as depicted, is often to profit from the situation by engaging pragmatically with both major powers, extracting benefits from each, rather than being forced into an impossible choice.
Playing them off each other, perhaps.
Or at least maximizing their options. They are keen to avoid becoming proxies in a larger geopolitical struggle, prioritizing their own national interests above all else. It's a very delicate balancing act on a very narrow tightrope for these countries.
So it's not just about the U.S.-China dynamic dominating the narrative. It also seems to be about Latin American countries actively forging other partnerships with various nations, beyond just these two giants, to balance their global strategic interests. It sounds like a truly multilateral chessboard down there.
Exactly, and this is a significant layer of complexity that sometimes gets missed. The material notes that some Latin American countries are proactively strengthening partnerships with other nations and blocs to diversify their relationships and to further balance their own global strategic interests. It's not just a bipolar world for them. For example, in July 2021, Mexico signed a strategic partnership agreement not with a global superpower, but with Panama, a key regional neighbor.
Interesting. Intra-regional ties.
Right. In another instance, in October 2022, South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo visited Chile, and their relationship was subsequently upgraded from a comprehensive partnership to a strategic partnership, building ties with Asia beyond China.
Diversifying their options again.
Exactly. These are just two examples, among many. With this multi-directional engagement in mind, China's partnership diplomacy in LAC increasingly faces the challenge of intertwining with these other, increasingly complex partnership networks. This dense web of relationships could potentially result in heightened strategic competition for influence and resources, or even create an unforeseen imbalance within China's meticulously constructed diplomatic efforts. If these other relationships become too prominent, too divergent, or begin to pull partner countries in different directions.
So China needs to navigate not just U.S. competition, but competition from everyone else, too.
It requires China to be even more adaptable and responsive in its diplomatic engagements, constantly assessing a much more complicated field.
Okay, another challenge. Latin America is famously known for its dynamic, often unpredictable political cycles. How do these internal shifts, like the famous pink waves of left-wing governments and its subsequent ebb and flow, affect the long-term stability and sustainability of China's carefully cultivated partnerships in the region? Politics change. Do partnerships change too?
This raises an absolutely critical question about the long-term consistency of relationships that are built on evolving political landscapes. It's a major variable. The rapid growth of China-LAC relations initially coincided remarkably with that pink wave, the rise of left-wing governments sweeping across the region in the early 21st century.
Right, Chavez in Venezuela, Lula in Brazil, Morales in Bolivia.
Exactly. This created a particularly conducive environment for cooperation, as many of these governments shared a desire to reduce dependence on the U.S. and diversify their international alignments. China was a welcome partner. However, after roughly 2015, the political pendulum swung rapidly to the right in many countries, bringing more conservative governments to power.
Like Macri in Argentina, Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Precisely. Such political changes, often driven by domestic concerns, can naturally lead to divergent diplomatic positions and, crucially, can weaken regional integration efforts. The example of CELAC, which, as we discussed, serves as the critical platform for China's collective partnership with LAC, perfectly illustrates this challenge. CELAC itself has been constrained by internal disagreements among regional powers.
Infighting within CELAC.
Significant disagreements. For instance, Brazil, under former right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro, not only voiced criticisms of China, but also suspended its participation in CELAC activities entirely for a period. This was largely due to severe disagreements among member states, particularly regarding the Venezuelan issue and the legitimacy of the Maduro government. This directly hindered the consensus-building process essential for the smooth functioning of the China-CELAC platform.
So internal LAC politics can directly impact the China relationship.
Directly. It demonstrates how internal political shifts can ripple outwards and complicate international partnerships, even those built on strong economic foundations. Consistency is a real challenge.
And finally, what about the very identity of these Latin American countries themselves? How does that factor into the partnership? Can shifting national identities actually cause friction or misalignment with China's consistent approach, like its focus on South cooperation?
This is a nuanced but profound challenge, maybe harder to quantify but very real. The materials suggest that while China's guiding doctrine of South-South cooperation, based on the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, has remained remarkably constant since its inception in 1949.
China's message stays the same.
Largely, yes, but shifts in national identity within some Latin American countries have subtly but significantly altered their perception of China and the broader relationship. This has, at times, reduced the consensus between China and these Latin American countries on specific global governance issues.
How so? Can you give an example?
Sure. Take Mexico. It's a founding member of the Group of 77, a bloc of developing nations. But it has evolved significantly and is now also an OECD member, a bloc comprised largely of developed economies. Consequently, Mexico no longer consistently adheres to the position of a developing country on many international issues, such as regional integration approaches, climate change targets, or trade standards.
It sees itself differently now.
It sees itself differently and acts differently on the global stage. Instead, Mexico increasingly attempts to act as a bridge between the U.S. and LAC, and even between developed and developing countries globally. This means while China still seeks a robust economic partnership, the shared South-South cooperation narrative becomes less potent in certain policy discussions, where Mexico's identity leans more towards developed nation status or a unique bridge role.
The shared identity phrase a bit.
It can fray. Similarly, Brazil, as a significant regional power, actively seeks leadership at the regional level and aspires to attain great power status within the global system. A key goal is a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Brazil explicitly hopes China will offer its unequivocal support for this bid. But China's stance on UN Security Council reform, and specifically Brazil's bid, has been consistently ambiguous, leaning neither strongly for nor against,
Hedging its bets.
perhaps, or managing complex relationships with other potential aspirants. But this ambiguity has, in turn, led to voices questioning the depth and reciprocity of the relationship within Brazil itself.
Are they really backing us? Kind of questions.
Exactly. It creates a fascinating dynamic where previously shared identity or expectations can diverge, complicating the partnership beyond simple economic ties or stated principles. Identity politics matters, even here.
Wow. What a deep dive indeed. We've really seen how China has intricately woven this all-round, multi-level and three-dimensional partnership network across Latin America and the Caribbean. It's quite something. It's evolved through these distinct, deliberate stages, from initial strategic exploration to that rapid strategic development, and now this ongoing strategic improvement phase.
Right.
And central to all of it is this highly sophisticated differential governance approach, meticulously categorizing countries based on political friendliness, geopolitical influence, and economic potential into those pivotal link and node partners. It's truly a masterclass in layered long-term diplomacy on a continental scale.
It really is quite sophisticated, and despite these successes and this incredibly complex construction, we've also meticulously unpacked the very real and persistent challenges. These aren't minor issues. They range from internal coordination issues within China's own vast diplomatic machinery to the swirling and often intense geopolitical currents of U.S.-China competition that exerts significant pressure on LAC nations.
Caught in the
Right, and even the internal political and identity shifts within Latin American countries themselves that can fundamentally change the very nature of engagement over time. This is clearly not a simple transactional relationship. It's a very complex, living, and continuously adapting web of relationships that requires constant management, negotiation, and strategic foresight from all sides.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does all of this mean for you, the listener, as you consider the future of global power dynamics, regional development in Latin America, and this intricate dance of international relations? What's the takeaway?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, despite the undeniable and often rising U.S.-China tensions that seek to divide the region, our sources suggest there's still significant, even untapped, room for progress in the developmental partnership between China and Latin America and the Caribbean. What's particularly fascinating here, I think, and often overlooked, is the immense potential for Latin American countries themselves.
Their own agency in this.
Exactly. By strategically promoting and strengthening their own regional integration through existing bodies like CELAC, or maybe new ones, they could actually nudge major powers operating in the region, like China and the U.S., to cooperate more, to acknowledge Latin American priorities more explicitly, and crucially, to use this external engagement to further their own regional integration goals, rather than simply being passive recipients or caught in a tug of war.
Does it use the competition to their advantage?
Potentially. It also raises an important question for Latin American countries. How can they establish and improve strategic communication mechanisms with China within the framework of partnership? To better understand each other's core interests and major concerns, ensuring their own voices are clearly heard and the specific priorities are met in this evolving landscape. Communication is key.
Well, absolutely. And the material even hints at exciting new content for these partnerships, suggesting they're far from static, they're still evolving. We're seeing a move not just towards bilateral, but increasingly multilateral partnerships, like the Belt and Road Energy Partnership you mentioned, involving 17 countries, including Venezuela, establishing a cooperation mechanism within a broader multilateral framework. And beyond that, specialized partnerships are now emerging, hyper-focused on specific cutting-edge fields. Think digital economy collaborations, sustainable development initiatives, advanced technology partnerships now taking shape between China and Brazil as proposed in their joint statement in April 2023. It truly suggests that China's strategy is still very much in motion, constantly adapting, innovating, and introducing new dimensions to its engagement, looking for novel ways to deepen ties and expand influence across the region for decades to come. It's a story that's definitely not over yet.